Are you going to sit by me and flip the...
Where's Chad tonight? He had to go somewhere. You know where Chad is tonight, or?
Sounds like he's surgery or something.
He canceled a meeting, was it? Yeah, this morning.
Is this the switch?
Negotiations, so. Yeah.
It's this one right here.
That's the switch. So we'll both run it, okay?
Sure.
Good evening. It's a couple minutes after 7. Welcome to the November Wabasha City Council meeting. Let's start with the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to be starting with two of our regular members not in attendance. They may show up. Sue, would you tell us what's going on with Chad?
Chad had a family obligation, and he was hoping to be back, but things didn't work out, so he called and said he would not make it.
Okay. And I believe at the end of the last meeting, Dean told me that he'd be missing right around the end of October and the first part of November. So let's get started. We have no guest speaker this evening. Do we have anyone who would like to address the council about any topic either on the agenda or how you think you could make Wabasha a better place to live, play, and visit? Going once, twice, and moving on. Council, I think we're to the point where we approve the agenda. Are there any changes or additions that you'd like to make?
I'd like to make a change to the consent agenda. You do that now or later?
Craig, I didn't hear that.
I'd like to pull item number 8.2 out of the consent agenda.
Okay, and that would be the fee schedule pricing? Okay. Any other changes or additions? Motion to approve with the change?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously. My comments tonight, since the last council meeting, we've had two informational meetings in Wabasha, and one of them was the Isaac Walton meeting, and our city was represented very well by Chad at that meeting. But I believe it was an informational meeting, and we talked about the dredge materials. There were questions, there were answers, and I don't know if we went away knowing more, Dallas, a lot more than we did when we showed it. That's a good activity, is to be available, communicate what we can. The other one was just the other night, a neighborhood meeting for the 2019 street projects, and some of the neighbors were here, and Brian Malm will cover that a little bit later. I thought that Mike Smith did a good job in covering the dredge material story in his paper this week, so thank you, Mike. And finally, I hope everyone has a safe and happy Thanksgiving Day. So committee reports. Let's start with somebody who thinks I don't like them, Tony.
Good evening, everyone. I'll start out with parks. A few things that were on the agenda was picnic table inventory. And the next item was beach park ADA improvements. As we redo our park plan, we're gonna be adding ADA improvements that we need to look at in the next few years. We're gonna be adding that to the list as well. We had some lighting options that we were looking at. One was in the campground. We had some safety concerns because it's kind of dark in the campground when you walk through. People are walking at night in golf carts, and so we looked at pricing out an option to put some lights in there. That came out to $3,000. That was approved by the park board to move forward with that. And the other option was the bike path up between 7th Street and Grant Boulevard. It's pretty dark in there, so we're gonna add, I believe it's 5 or 6 lights in there. That's gonna, if I remember right, around $4,000 for that. We're getting together with the Main Street program. They are gonna order some bigger flower pots to go downtown, probably about a couple feet in diameter, a couple feet high. The ones we have down there are pretty small. It was kind of a trial. People seem to like them, so we're going with bigger and better options, more permanent. And so the park board bought 2 flower pots for Heritage Park stage and then 1 for the library. The rest are going to be bought from local businesses downtown. And then we're going to replace some electrical at Ike's Park for the shelters, part of the bathroom, some outside lighting, and then the meter socket and some other stuff that were on a pole that we're no longer going to have. So we approved to get that done. We had somebody, that company, come in and mud jack the concrete walkway through Ike's Park. So that was finished today. So it should be a lot smoother through there, a little bit easier to plow snow instead of biting the steering wheel every now and then. Moving on to streets, we had no outlet sign request on Cooley Way. Makes sense. There's quite a few semis that end up back in there, no place to turn around. And so then they end up backing all the way out Cooley Way until you get to the fairgrounds. So we're going to install a no outlet sign there. We had our snow hauling bids come back for when we hire trucks to haul snow. It's going to be $75 an hour per truck. The company's going to have 3 trucks available if we need them. So we did not receive a second price for other trucks, so we went with that one. Last year, I think it was $72 or $73 an hour, so not much of an increase. Street commission appointments, Jim Filesticker and Brad Timish re-upped for the next 2 years. Sue, do you need anything special for that, or is it just,
Yep, just
if
let
I
me
send
know.
you an email, or, okay.
Yep.
So we got that done, and we talked over the downtown parking study. I got the information after the agenda went out last week, so they're gonna look through and see if they have any questions that they can add to the parking study from downtown. And the last option that we added today, I got a call from Lake City, and they are in the process of getting a new leaf truck. And for those of you that don't know what it is everybody gets their leaves out on the curb, and the truck goes by and vacs them up. It's a pretty quick process. Saves a lot of work for the people in their town. And so Dylan and I went up last Friday. We took a video of it, took some pictures of it, talked to him about it, looked over the condition of the truck, just to kind of prepare for ahead of time for when they're going to get trade-in value on it from their McQueen, their new truck supplier. So we'll kind of be prepared to maybe bring that forward, start talking about that for next year, maybe this winter purchase or something like that, but it's not, it's kind of up in the air yet. So other than that, that's all I have.
Questions for Tony?
Actually, I have a question, Tony. Last week, Kim Savage was here, and he had a boat down on the city dock, and he talked about motion-sensitive solar lights, and,
We're going to do that next spring. I actually talked to him last night about it.
okay.
So, yeah, we're going to go, I believe, I'd have to count the poles, but we're going to do like 2, and then 2 in the middle and 2 on the end. And, yeah, that's a good idea. I mean,
Do
for
those-
the cost.
Do those spuds stay in all winter, or do you pull them out?
No, they're permanent. Well, I mean, they don't move.
Okay, so you can mount them lights on there and leave them on?
And we got plenty of travel.
Yep.
So, we'll get up, pretty high and get them pointed down and
Yep.
make sure that they're somewhat secured on there, so.
Good idea, thank you.
Yep.
Tony, I appreciate that update that we get from you during the month, and keep that up.
Yep.
Okay? John, let's go to you.
Port Authority met on the 16th, 7 o'clock, light agenda, regular bills and whatnot, and under general business, we reviewed and approved the letter that went out to the Army Corps. It was published in the paper this week as well. So that was really the lion's share of the meeting. We also discussed the hospitality study, and we'll no doubt be asking one of these consultants to come in and kind of school the Port Authority on what that entails and why it might be a good idea. So that'll be in future months in the future. That was it for Port Authority.
Questions? Brian?
We had utilities today, nothing worth mentioning happened.
Any questions? Craig, good to see you.
Good to be here. Planning Commission met October 9th. We had a public hearing on 3 parcels that are facing Highway 61. We're going to talk about them later on tonight. So our recommendation is to change those from highway commercial to industrial. The basic reason is that they're already being used as industrial, and they were grandfathered in, but it would be better if we got a request from the owner to make it industrial, and we agree with that request. We also looked at parking study, which is also on the agenda tonight. Talked about that a little bit, and it's here for discussion. And then we also were brought up to date on the latest with the Solar Stone or NRG solar farm out there by the jail out there. They're still working on the vegetation issues. There's supposed to be vines that are climbing that fence. The fence along Hiawatha, we're talking to them about possibly raising that fence so that when the vines climb up there, you won't be able to see the solar farm. And but that's still ongoing discussions. So that was about it for the Planning Commission.
Okay, questions? Thank you, Craig. Jeff, anything to add, or
Nope.
Steve?
Nope.
All right. Sue, do you have points for the administrator's report?
I do not, but is Jean here?
Who? No, I
okay.
haven't seen him yet.
I thought maybe ambulance had a report.
Yeah, okay. No, Gina's not here yet. All right, moving on then to item number 8, consent agenda, which are down to 2 items. Approve the October 2nd, 2018 regular minutes and the warrants.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, passed unanimously. We are moving on to item number 9, which is a public hearing with the proposed 2019 street improvement project. And I see some people in the audience tonight who live on one or more of the affected streets. But when we have a public hearing, we open with staff report. It looks like Brian's ready with that. Then I'll ask citizens or whoever would like to comment. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a little update. If you recall, at your last meeting, you considered the feasibility study for the project, and I gave a presentation on that. And at that meeting, you passed a resolution receiving the report and calling for this hearing that you're going to have tonight. Since that time, the notice of the hearing was published in the paper, and notices were sent out to the affected property owners, along with an invitation to a neighborhood informational meeting that we had on Tuesday night. So on Tuesday night, we had about at least 16 people signed in and I think everybody signed in, but 16 people. Mr. Mayor, you were here. I gave basically the same presentation that council saw at the feasibility report stage. Added a little bit more information about the assessments and kind of the process there. Had some good dialogue with the neighbors there. One of the things that we did cover, and I had a list there, and I would say if anybody else is interested in this, I do have a list. It was brought up, I think Tony brought it up, that if you were assessed on the 2013 project and you are also on this project, you would not be assessed for this project. So we did do a comparison of the 2013 assessment compared to this assessment roll and did identify those properties that would not receive an assessment as a part of this project because they were assessed on the 2013 project. So if folks have questions about that, we do have that information available for them. So after the public hearing, if council chooses to move forward with the project, there is a resolution that you would have to pass ordering the improvement and authorizing preparation of plans and specs. And then there also would be a work order for you to consider, which would authorize us to do that work. If you recall, you did previously authorize a work order for the preliminary engineering and the topographic survey, and we've done a bunch of that work already. And the total of those two work orders is covered in the total project cost that was in the report. So that's all I had, Mr. Mayor. Any questions from council?
I have a question on exhibit
Yes, sir.
quarter. You want to answer that now or later?
I'd be happy to answer it now.
And I just kind of wondered about, it said the design and bidding services are 40,000, construction services are 85,000 for a total of 125,000
Yep.
fees for consultants. But soil borings or construction testing would be extra.
Yep.
So you're not, are you gonna normally do construction testing? Like,
Yeah, and the reason we don't include it is because we want to do a little bit of design work before we determine what really needs to be done for that. We will do some, probably some cores on the job. On the 2016 project, we actually did some ground penetrating radar to determine the thickness. We will probably do that on the sections that we're going to reclaim and pave, so we know exactly what we're reclaiming. So there will be some geotechnical up front. And then on the construction testing side, we typically take a few samples of the asphalt and send it to the lab to get tested. And we use a sub-consultant for that, either American Engineering or Braun Intertech. So.
okay, so the construction services that you do provide are mainly the inspectors that are on the job? And
Yep, the contract administration, the pay estimates and administering the contract, any construction staking that would be necessary, which would be fairly minimal on a project like this, and then, yeah, the full-time construction observation.
And do you furnish the city a breakdown of these costs?
We could, if you'd like,
Yeah.
break the construction services up into those different categories.
Just like to see how we got to that
Yep.
number.
Yep. We provide that.
If you can, then I think it'd be great.
Yep. I can't do it right now, but I can get it to you later. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. One other thing, Mr. Mayor reminded me of, and I forgot, and Tony just reminded me. So the other thing that council may be aware of this, but MnDOT, actually it was, I think, a year and a half ago, or maybe a year ago, we applied, put together a grant application on behalf of the city for the local road improvement program funding.
For small cities.
For small cities, yep. There were a bunch of different categories. The legislature set aside some money in different categories, and so we did apply under the small cities category. The first round of selection that happened last year or earlier this year, I can't remember, we were not selected for a project. Wabasha projects were not selected. But then in the legislative session, they set aside some more money, and MnDOT decided that they would not solicit for additional projects, they would take the projects that weren't selected the first round and reconsider them, and lo and behold, you received some funding through that program. One of the project areas that was funded is a part of the 2019 project, and that's the 8th Street and Allegheny by the Dollar General. the road that we're going to raise up a little bit, so there was some funding for that. The other project we applied for was actually extending 12th Street further to the west, basically out to Highway 60, which was not in the scope of this project. So assuming you want to utilize those funds, we would be expanding the project to include that as well. So,
Excellent.
That was good news.
yeah, yep, always good to get
Very good news.
money from somewhere else, right?
Right.
Okay, we open that public hearing at 7:15. Now I'll invite any person who wishes to address the council regarding the project to come to the podium now. Identify yourself, where you live. Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Okay.
Jane Glander, 1503 River Drive South. And first of all, just to say that Brian did an excellent job for all of us that were here on Tuesday night. My only question is, living on River Drive South since the street went in, is does the city maintain a maintenance plan for their streets, or is it just haphazard when it happens? Because I know what maintenance has been done on River Drive South since it went in, and basically, except for one time, it's been nothing. So we put a lot of money into streets, and past precedents, I'm not saying this council hasn't necessarily put time and money into maintaining those streets on a maintenance basis. Is that something that is a planned thing, or does it, if somebody complains the loudest, their street gets re-gravelled or blacktopped, or how does it happen?
Tony could probably answer that question.
Our plan is basically assess the streets every year and come up with a plan, more or less, especially with when Brian got on board, what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it, when we need to do it. In the past, before Brian got here, we have chip sealed River Drive South twice. We have crack filled 2 to 3 times in the last 16 years. And 5 years ago, we did minor patching, and we raised the blacktop around the manholes that were sticking out about 1/2 inch. Not too sure what other maintenance needs to be done, but one thing that really hurt that street, it has almost 0 grade, so there's a lot of water sitting on it. The curb and gutter is fine, but a lot of the water don't even make it to the curb and gutter. So talking with Brian, you know, in a lot of streets, I don't know why, when I first got here, a lot of them were flat. There's water sitting everywhere. So what we've been trying to do is put a 1% to a 1.5% grade to get it to crown in the center so we can at least get the water out to the curb. River Drive is going to be a little bit easier because there's concrete curb on there. So I think there's probably going to be a couple sections that are going to be replaced, but by all means, the center of the roads, which will help with the manholes that are partially sticking up, and yeah, that's about it. So I got maintenance plans back from 2005 of everything that we've done. Before me, I don't have anything. So
Jane, would you have any further questions? Okay, good. John, Steve, and I were around, I think we were the 3 around for the 2013 project. So we've lived through 13, 16, now through 19. And back then we had a real conversation about this assessment policy. But my comment is that working, people are around town are being treated with consistency. The 20% assessment of the total project for the properties that are bettered by the street. And a few of us sat through a meeting, maybe a year ago, about looking out for the next 20 years on streets. So I would compliment the council, I'd compliment the engineering firm, I'd compliment Chad on being able to see down the road. And I think the streets of Wabasha folks are in darn good shape.
Our assessment policy is among the most favorable to the citizens that there is. I mean, some cities are 40%, 50%. They're high. Brian would know better than I, but some of them, we're amongst the lowest, aren't we, Brian?
Yes.
Yeah. So
In
we're,
order to bond, we've got to assess a minimum 20, right? Is that how it went?
That's
think
how it
so,
went.
yeah.
So that, and we've just been consistent with that, and I think everyone's happy with that.
Okay, we'll close the public portion of the public session at 7:28. Council members, any comments or questions before we vote on this? Then a motion approving the resolution ordering improvement and authorized preparation of plans and specifications, and a second motion, which we'll do after the first one. Okay.
I'll make the first motion.
second.
Now further discussion? Let's roll. It's a big project, bigger project.
Okay, Folcom,
Yes.
Mayor Hall,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Woodley,
Yes.
Sulla.
Yes.
That motion passed unanimously. Second motion is to approve the work order.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion? On the work order, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously. Okay. Just in time. Okay, that was the hearing. Wabasha Sand and Gravel rezoning and land use plan amendment request. Brian, were you going to handle that? All right.
I don't know if you want to do the major traffic generator one. Do you want to, until Christie comes back? It's up to you.
Yes. Let's skip to number 3.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this project is similar to what happened in, I believe it was 2016. Again, this involves moving sand from the Wabasha gravel pit on this side of the highway across the road to the basically what we're calling the Dairy Queen pit. So, Corps of Engineers project that they've bid out, and they have a contractor on board, LS Marine. According to city ordinance, based on the traffic volume that will happen as a part of that hauling, the ordinance requires consideration of a transportation impact study, which is required in your ordinance. Back in 2016, it was recognized that projects like this, there should be a waiver considered for that, and so you amended your ordinance to consider the waiver. And we did go through that process in 2016. This is a very similar project, with the exception of the volume is bigger, and so the number of trucks hauling would be larger as well. You have a copy of the application in your packet. It's 300,000 cubic yards of sand. The applicant is proposing 230 tractor-trailer trips per day. 75 days of hauling, and they're requesting working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, They would like the option of being able to operate 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, to shorten the duration. In their application, they were hoping to start today, but obviously that didn't take into account the council meetings and the waivers and that type of thing. So obviously they did not start today. We did request comments from MnDOT and from Wabasha County. Christie put together a memo with Wabasha County's comments and as well as MnDOT's comments, and then I put together a memo just summarizing what happened in 2016, what's proposed, and then I summarized the conditions that you put on granting the waiver of the transportation impact study back in 2016. And basically back then what you decided was to require a single access point out of the pits on Brugger Valley Road, which is County Road 30, and not to route trucks down Highway 61 or Hiawatha Drive. The Hiawatha Drive concern was with the residences there that are along that section. And then the concern about routing trucks on Highway 61 had to do with basically the trucks making that left turn off of Shields and basically trying to get up to speed, but then having to make that right turn immediately onto Phelps, basically. The concern that they wouldn't get up to speed and there'd be some traffic interaction there. So last time you basically required that they use that same in and out point on Brugger Valley Road. Requirement to have the trucks hauling signs up in accordance with MnDOT requirements. To basically do some maintenance on Phelps Avenue if that falls into disrepair as a result of the hauling. And then you wanted to reserve the right to stop truck hauling or reduce the number of allowable trips per day if there's a traffic operation or safety issue that happens during hauling. So yeah, that was basically the conditions that you put on in 2016, and you did grant the waiver in 2016. This is very similar, like I said, except for just the volume and the duration of hauling. So our recommendation was to grant the waiver with similar conditions. And then there were some additional MnDOT comments here that they talked about some information about stormwater runoff. Doesn't appear that that's a requirement, but that could be something you could consider as a part of your waiver if you wanted to require the applicant to provide information about runoff. MnDOT was requesting that. That's the summary. Any questions?
Hold on a sec. Christie, anything to add that you'd like to add?
I think that was pretty much all that we collected. So I collected all the information that Brian just shared. So.
Okay, so we need a motion to grant the waiver with the conditions included.
I'll make a motion to that.
I want a little discussion first.
Sure, but we have to get a second.
Okay, second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Yes. Are we gonna, in this waiver here, are we gonna go back and specify the route that they used in 2018 instead of, because that wasn't in, I don't think that was what was listed in that waiver application, the route.
It was back then, and that's what we're intending to say here, that the temporary CASA 30 access to be used as both the entrance and the exit location.
Okay.
So that's the intent of that, is that they would come in and out on Brugger.
Right, that's the way I would like it. And also, I'm not a fan of 24-hour hauling. I don't think we should be doing that, putting 460 trips a day through that area. It's just not, I don't think that's right, and I think it sets a bad precedent for the DMMP barge terminal, because then going down the line, then someone down there, if that comes to fruition, they're gonna wanna do the same thing 24/7, and I don't like 24/7 hauling in that area.
One thing I should mention, I forgot, is the applicant is here. If you have any for him, or
What do our conditions say right now? Is it the 7 to 7?
right now, we did not put any condition on minimizing the time frame. So that's not in my memo, but it's certainly up to your discretion whether you want to put a condition on limiting the time frame.
How did they haul last time?
They did not haul 24 hours a day, but they did haul Monday through Friday, normal working hours,
Okay.
basically your
That was
typical
by
7
choice.
a.m. to 7 p.m. Yeah,
That was in good weather too, so I'm thinking if they're gonna start hauling in November sometime and haul through the winter, 75 days, which is about 3.5 months. And if they run into bad weather, that's gonna stretch out, so then they're gonna be bumping up into that MnDOT project starting sometime in April or May. So I'm thinking to haul extra hours. That route has nobody living on it, that haul route. So I don't know that that's such a bad idea.
Jim Raymer lives right across the street from it. There's about 4 other houses. There's a house with a daycare up there.
You're right,
You know, there's, I live up that way.
you
There's
live up
people-
that way,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I
but
mean-
trucks aren't rolling by
And
your
then
house.
what about where the Eagle Valley Cafe is? They're gonna have trucks going by there all the time, and I think that's too many. I don't, like I said, I'm not a fan of 24-hour hauling at all.
I grant that there's probably a greater risk for that. I don't think they would do that unless they absolutely needed to.
The applicant might be able to give you some
Yeah,
clarification.
I'd like to invite the representative to the podium. Hang around, would you, Craig?
This Brian.
Mayor, Council, thank you for having us and taking a look at our application. I'm Taylor Marine. Our goal is to come in here and as safely and efficiently as we can move that 300,000 yards of material basically from one side of the highway to the other. Our goal with requesting the 24 hours a day operation, and it'd just be Monday through Friday, no weekends is given what takes place in Wabasha throughout the year. The goal is it's going to be the same amount of trips, no matter how we do it. Our thought over the course of the winter, just given nicer days, worse days, is to keep it moving so we can shorten that window of disturbance to the city to a shorter period as we can, and then also just make sure as we get going that it's the same duration that the Corps has given us as they gave the last contractor. It is twice the amount of material though, and that was our goal. The duration that we took into account certainly, with respect to people living in the area, is the fact that it is winter. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Certainly, on the one hand, we always see it as windows are closed, people are indoors, more so in the winter than in the summer. However, at the same time, I'll admit now you're getting into the lights of the traffic, which shorter days, that certainly bears as well. But like I said, our goal is to just try to get in here, minimize the total time that we're down here in Wabasha disturbing this and doing the streets. And then with respect to crossing Highway 61, it's certainly not as much traffic off hours as it is during the day, and so from a safety standpoint was our other consideration, to try to just minimize the amount of minimize any interaction that we would have crossing Highway 61.
This is a different company than we had last time. Can you just tell me why we're not using the same company?
The Corps of Engineers is in charge of the project, and they have to publicly bid the contract every time. So it'd be similar to your projects where you have to let it for public bidding, and the low bidder gets the job. So
Brian, I think I'll accept that.
So your intent is that if it's going good, you're gonna haul until maybe 10 at night, 11 at night. If it's storming and icy, then you're probably gonna shut her down at 5 at night. Is that kind of what you're looking at, or?
I guess no, in the reality of it, no. That it basically be a shift. We're limited for a number of reasons to basically a 12-hour shift is the most one crew can do. So if we go 7 to 7 to go an extra 3 hours, the Army Corps for safety reasons won't let us go over a 12-hour shift. And then furthermore, just from a personnel standpoint, I can't ask someone to come in for 3 hours or even, start splitting to shifts to, 6-hour shifts or 7-hour shifts. If we did it, our goal would be to split the 2 shifts. Now, whether that's 2 8-hour shifts or 2 12-hour shifts, I guess it depends on weather and conditions. But yeah, certainly snow, ice, rain, anything like that would certainly be a driving factor in what the schedule will dictate.
Other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're going to vote on this. If the vote fails, we can bring back another motion, not the same one, but modified. So the motion is to grant a waiver with conditions that are listed in our packet, basically. Roll, please.
Sola,
No.
Woodley,
Yes.
Balcom,
Yes?
Friedmeier,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Mayor Hall.
Yes. And that motion passed
5-1.
5-1. Downtown parking study.
Do the study first, not the zone. I'm game. Let's do the study first. So about a year ago, we started, city staff was asked to conduct a parking study for downtown. We had a study kind of subcommittee plan. If you want to go to the last page of our little memo here, you'll see the map. So the study area is essentially from the Mississippi River, Bridge Avenue to Bailey, and just past 3rd Street there. So that's kind of the rectangle of property. That's pretty important. The parking in red is off-street. The parking shown on-street are counted by blocks, and then the public parks are now shown in black. So you can kind of see those big parking lots under the bridge, which Craig asked us to look at a couple of weeks ago. So we started this study just because primarily we're looking at a big expansion from the National Eagle Center. We wanted to make sure that as a planning commission, we kind of understood what's going on for parking. As you'll know, in the transportation, in parking rather in the downtown and traditional downtown commercial area, we don't really think about parking in the same way that we do for the rest of the community. They almost kind of get a free pass for parking. So we really wanted to make sure that we understood where the parking is, what's happening, whether or not we have enough parking, and then where it all is, how it lands. So we decided to do this parking study just to determine parking counts. And it's important to note here that the way we did that was by land use and land use only. So using the different properties, we have 168 parcels downtown. Each of them have been designated as a land use, whether that's office or retail or residential or commercial, a library, post office, all sorts of things. And they're all denoted as how much parking they need in the zoning ordinance. So how much parking does an office space, how many office personnel equals so many parks. So many parking stalls are needed per chair in a restaurant. So we use that land use map to determine how many parking stalls were needed. So based on the land uses of the properties in that rectangle that we just talked about, the city requires about 1,112 off-street parking spaces in that area. There are about 429 off-street parking in the area, and the study also counted the number of on-site or on-street parking stalls, including all the handicaps, and there are about 490 on-streets, 429 off-streets. And then we decided to look at, and that's the raw data you can see here in the raw data with street, per ordinance, off-street that exists, on-street that exists, the total parking, and then the surplus parking or deficit parking. But we also took out residential and church uses because primarily office, retail, and commercial, those types of uses are the 8 to 5 day-to-day weekday stuff, whereas residential and church stuff are primarily the weekends. So these are parking stalls that don't typically conflict with one another. So we excluded those from the calculations. And then we wanted to really provide, further on the next page, you'll see there, though, that it's also unlikely that the three main uses, again, office, retail, and restaurant, would all be used at the same time. We know that offices are primarily, for example, a daytime use, whereas retail has less daytime presence, a little more on the weekends, and restaurants are pretty commonly spread out throughout. This was a table that we used these land use assumptions from a national standard, and edited them a bit, trying to really understand what the Wabasha's details of those three uses were. And given that, the final step in our analysis was really to grab all the specific numbers from the National Eagle Center, which, as you guys know, consumes quite a bit of the parking. So this is direct data from the National Eagle Center. They categorized theirs in three different basic pools. One's median attendance, what's their average yearly temperature or average attendance, and then of course their peak attendance is kind of important. Their peaks are usually in March, Soar of the Eagles, and then mostly on weekends. They also have done a tremendous amount of data collected from their people, just as far as who actually attends the National Center. So they have adult, senior, and children kind of broken down, and then their assumptions of how many of their actual total people take cars. So how many cars do they need? So they've actually done quite a bit of analysis about their own parking. And then from the land use data, which we had in-house, these land use assumptions, and then the National Eagle Center kind of overview of all their detailed information, we were actually able to provide the parking analysis. So this final table, I'm sorry, this is a lot of numbers, but this is kind of how it all weeded out. And we tried to manage weekdays, evenings, weekends, and then those National Eagle Center peak times. And what we really found is that only on peak NEC weekends are we short traffic, short parking, and we're really only short 24 parks. And then on weekends, where all the vacancies in town, so right now, that downtown rectangle that I showed you at the beginning has quite a few vacancies. But we didn't want to assume that the vacancies will always continue, as we hope that we will fill them. So even with all the vacancies filled, with some office, retail, restaurant sort of mix that we threw into the vacancies, we're still only short about 50 parks. So we really don't have a huge parking issue. Is everyone still with me? So last page, and I promise we'll stop talking about parking. But so anyway, the overall view of this is we really only have that shortage of 24 parks, or the worst case scenario, 50 parks. The one glaring issue, though, is it's a big rectangle. So we're assuming that people can travel those 3 or 4 blocks to find an off-street park, maybe to get all the way towards National Eagle Center or the restaurant that they want to sometimes. So it may not be convenient parking, but parking exists. Primarily the take-home for me as part of the Planning Commission is that we can move forward with all future planning projects and say, if we agree to a big project downtown, like maybe the National Eagle Center expansion, we can now more intelligently say, this is what the parking situation is. What are we going to add to it? And does this mean that we should bring more parking closer to those events versus having them walk these distances? Or how does it skew these original numbers? Does that make sense to you guys?
So this is an informational presentation.
Yeah.
We don't take action on it tonight.
This isn't going to end up part of city code. This will just be numbers that we will use for future development in the downtown area.
Jeff, I think you were pretty active in this, weren't you?
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, that's about the same thing I think I came up with. We were sitting pretty good, actually.
Right, so I mean, it'll be useful to have both the charts, so we kind of understand exactly where the land uses are, but also the maps that say, here's where the parking actually, these are the folks that are generating the parking, and here's where the parking exists. So as we move forward with applications, we can more intelligently talk about parking. That was the grand overview.
Okay, other questions or discussion? Would you like to go to the number one then?
Sure. I can get back there. Thank you so much. So again, this is a rezone application for the Wabasha Sand and Gravel. It's been a real popular topic this evening. The three sites you can see are right along Highway 61. We actually chatted with Bob Kohner about weeks ago, and he was confused as to why the property was zoned commercial. He doesn't remember actually ever seeing it commercial, thought it was industrial. We immediately went to work, tried to find some old zoning maps to try to confirm for him when it was rezoned from industrial to commercial, because it's been an open mine for more than 5 decades. And I could not find an approved zoning map later than 2010. I don't know. So we couldn't confirm or deny when it was rezoned for him. We have actual zoning applications in text form on our computer system from 1994, but I don't have an official map. So I couldn't tell him when that got rezoned. But Mr. Kohner came in, primarily they would like to do some additional kind of heavy industrial type of work on this one of these 3 parcels this spring that will help Highway 61's arc cuts, infrastructure for the new highway resurface. And to be able to do that, they have to have an industrial use. So at this point, they're operating kind of as a legal non-conforming use. And given the fact that it's going to be industrial, it's been industrial for the last 50 years. Staff recommended approval. It went to Planning and Zoning Commission in our November or October meeting. There were no issues or comments from folks that were notified of this meeting. And the Planning Commission approved it unanimously at that meeting. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
We are to have a motion to approve the Wabasha Sand and Gravel request to rezone from commercial to industrial.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Brian, this is not a test, but why did you make that motion?
If you look at that map with the zoning, everything's industrial around it. Just sitting on an island is commercial.
Okay.
And like Christy said, they're using it as industrial anyway, and they're using it legally, so it's not conforming, but it's still legal.
Right.
So they're just going to continue to use it as industrial no matter what we do. So we might as well make the zone conform to what they're using.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other discussion? If not, we'll call for the motion to approve the change. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously.
We also need to do the same thing for the land use. So the land use is also commercial, and it needs to be industrial, which would comply with multiple rules in the comprehensive plan. So hopefully this moves towards accomplishing some of the goals in the comp plan too.
Yes.
Got it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Emily, do you think I heard a word of that? Okay. So we have sand and gravel, we have the rezoning done, downtown parking, the marine traffic, good job on that. Number 4, Board of Appeal open book discussion.
Yes, at the last meeting, Council directed me to contact our city attorney on our charter and the Minnesota statute that would allow us to do that. And it is his opinion that because of our charter, we cannot. So we will continue to have a Board of Appeal. So we will continue to, I will continue to reach out so everybody gets trained, though the training now is online, so it's pretty painless. So we will continue in that fashion.
So following the charter, we don't have that option
Right.
today.
We could always,
It would take a change of the charter.
yes.
Okay.
I don't think we want to do that anyway,
Okay.
to give up control
Right.
of, you know, our say in what our citizens are being taxed. So I don't think it's a good idea, regardless if we can or can't do it.
So from what I've seen is, under the open book thing, you would go to the assessor, who's the person who assigned the value in the first place, and then you would make your case to them and only them, and you don't have a local representative to try and represent your point of view. So your other option then is to go back, and if you don't like what the assessor said, then you go to the city, the county.
Yeah.
So you're seeing all county people there and not city people.
Good points. So we don't need a motion on that because we don't have an option on that, right? Is that what you said, Sue?
Yes.
Well, then let's try and get back. Craig, I believe we're up to, after we set the November budget workshop, we'll be up, back to you. And that, does anyone have a problem with the 20th?
I can't make the 20th, but if everybody else can, I can get caught up.
Well, how would it be if you gave us a 4-page review and recommendation, letters of endorsement and things like that, Brian? I mean, there's got to be a price for not showing up. Huh?
Well, I can certainly give my input off-site.
All right. How about the rest?
It's all good.
We're all good. We're all good for that, Sue.
What time?
It's
5:30.
before the Port Authority meeting, and we're going to run from 5:30 to 7. That'd be an hour and a half. And that's an open meeting if the public wants to observe or share.
That's our final workshop for the budget,
Final goes in December.
right, but that's our final workshop for the budget that we have to approve in December.
Yes.
Where will it be held?
Pardon me?
Where will the budget workshop be held?
We were thinking.
Port Authority is here, so either in this room or in the conference room at City Hall. Okay. Item 10.6. The 2019 fee schedule pricing.
And the reason I asked this to be pulled out was because I didn't understand. I understand that the prices probably need to go up because of inflation and other things, but I didn't understand exactly what was being proposed. So in the handout, it has a proposed increase of 3% and 4%, and I understand that the street commission approved the 4%. So is that what we're approving?
Yeah, but the list, so the street commission approved everything in the shaded. And on mine, it was yellow, but I think at yours, it's gray.
This is, there's two columns, 3% and 4%.
Yep, so we gave them the decision. And I think the date on the top of the page possibly was updated last year, but our street, our public works prices weren't in that. So it's been like 2 years or 3 years since we've updated that discolored section. So they chose to go with the 4%. And then the utilities does their own. I'm not sure if there's a fire department section in there. So Sue, I don't know if, is this to update the whole thing, or was this just for Public Works? I'm not sure what.
I believe Public Works, because it's only
Okay.
what's highlighted in yellow.
So you're basically, we're updating the gray section or the yellow section, depending on what you're looking at.
Okay,
And
so
we're increasing the prices by 4%.
recommending a 4% increase.
Yep.
And then, so we got some other costs in here. Emergency costs, public safety costs, ambulance costs, public works costs. There's a column of costs in there that's called the standard value. Is that what you're proposing too? Is that also what you're proposing? Value?
I didn't bring a copy with me, but I don't remember seeing anything other than going through the yellow section, or would be gray.
So all we're approving is what's been highlighted here, the Public Works.
I believe so, yep.
Just the 4% column?
Right.
Okay. So all these other pages are,
If it,
here's another one, a resolution establishing various fees for miscellaneous clerk fees, fire department, blah, blah, blah.
if I was doing it,
Resolution is, we have to pass a resolution to change a fee, so
Well, what are you proposing?
in the, what was forwarded from the
Yeah.
street commission.
I mean, this doesn't have to happen tonight. What I thought happened is it went to everybody's, and I don't know if that happened or not. Chad would know, and he's not here, so you could pull it tonight, and we could make sure that the PD, fire department, everybody's had a chance to go through their sections and make sure that theirs is up to date, and we still got November.
Okay. Yeah, if we,
Maybe
just
that'd
so
be
we
a-
can be clear on what we're actually voting on.
Yep.
So I don't
Like
want to table this until November?
December,
No, December, excuse me.
Yeah.
December 4th?
Yeah. You're gonna,
Tony, do you compare your rates with other communities?
Yep, Lake City and Wabasha County, I got a copy of theirs. We're a little bit on the higher side. 95% chance we don't use this for anything except FEMA.
Okay,
They look at our rates and sometimes they cut it down, so it's, I don't know how more accurate we can really be with them,
okay.
So that's kind of the,
So Craig, did you want to
I'll
table
make a-
this?
yeah, I'll make a motion to table this to the next meeting.
Second it. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, passed unanimously. All right. Sue, did we miss anything?
No, we did not. We're on to donations.
We're up to donations. We love the donations, Ruby. John, would you read those for us?
Certainly. The following donations were received by the city for the library fund, $25 in memory of Tony Tennis, by Bruce and Bev Hall, $20 to the library in memory of Tony Tennis by Mark and Alice Jarstead, $100 to the library for author presentation Kent Newburn by Arjack. Library is $160 for author presentation Ken Newburn by Friends of the Library. Library refugee photography exhibit, $500 from Friends of the Library. Library, $100 anonymous. Christmas decorations got $200 Firemen's Relief Association. The ambulance received $500 for CPR mannequin by the Wabasha Bridge Ladies. Main Street program, Adopt earth planter, $1,050 by the VFW.
All right, a motion to accept.
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, passed unanimously. Last comment, you've heard it a million times on television, you've seen it in the radio and on the magazines. Tuesday is the day to vote. And I can't add anything to that other than if you don't vote, you really don't have an oar in the water. If you do vote and express yourself, then I think that you have the right, Joe, to express yourself. Or motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Nice.
Thank you, Sue.